Hello, Ruby, and welcome to the United Stand. I'm joined by Fabrizio. How you doing, Fabrizio?
Hello, my friend. All good, all good. Thank you. Happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation, as always.
No worries. We're going to talk about this sort of De Gea story that's developing, also the striker, Barcelona situation, and centre-backs and a few other bits that people want me to talk to you about. But we seem to start off with this every time you're on the show at the moment, the sale of Manchester United. There was a story yesterday that it felt like it was going down the Sir Jim Ratcliffe route, but there was a story from Sam Wallace, who's a Telegraph journalist in the UK, and he was saying, still think it's going to be Qatar. When they enter a race like this, they don't like losing. Anything you're hearing, Fabrizio? We've sort of had a week of silence on the sale, and obviously the transfer window is coming soon. United fans want some action.
Yeah, I think it's crazy the situation we're living. Honestly, this is just my opinion, just because I think a club like Manchester United deserve to have the clarity in this moment. Now it's May, it's no longer March or April. Now they deserve to have some clarity to plan for the summer. I think also people into the club, and meaning also Erik ten Hag, need and deserve some clarity to prepare the summer transfer window. So this is my general opinion just to start. And I think what you mentioned in the article of Sam, it was just his opinion, and I think is what you can feel when you speak to people close to Sheikh Yassin. They've always been confident. They've really always been confident, even when we had reports of Ineos closer than Qatari people to buy Manchester United. They were still stating that they are confident, that they feel their bid is the best one for Manchester United. So I think this is why we had this kind of stories or rumors. Is the reality. They still feel confident on the Qatari side, but now it's on the Glazers. Now they have to clarify what they want to do, who is the preferred bidder, what they want to do in terms of timing, in terms of next weeks, because as you mentioned, the transfer window is coming. Other clubs are already in direct contact with players, in direct contact with agents, preparing and planning for their summer transfer window. Real Madrid are in advanced process to sign Jude Bellingham. So you can't lose time now. I think this is absolutely crucial for Manchester United, and they have to make sure the situation will be clarified in May. So let's see what happens in the next 7-10 days. This is the feeling of sources close to the process to try to clarify this situation. But again, it's on the Glazers, and I think, and I hope for Manchester United it will happen very soon. Otherwise, on the market, you can have big problems in terms of planning for your transfer window.
Well, it's like you said about Alexis McAllister, isn't it? United can't really get involved in that when they don't know what the sale's going to be. Let's talk about David De Gea, Fabrizio. There was a big mistake by De Gea last night in the game against West Ham, but the talk has always been that the contract talks are really positive. Erik ten Hag even said that after the game yesterday. This morning, we had a story from a local Manchester journalist saying that there's people within the club that have now got their doubts about De Gea, which is obviously... It's not an ideal story to have when we've got so many important games, and we thought that De Gea was going to sign a new contract. Is De Gea's contract now in jeopardy, or do you think that still gets signed?
No, I think from what I understand, the conversation is still positive, is still advanced between David De Gea and Manchester United. Also, sources close to the player side feel that he only wants to stay at Manchester United. So now it's important to understand about the salary reduction, because if Man United didn't trigger the option, it's because they wanted and they expected a salary reduction for David De Gea to stay at Man United, maybe with a longer contract, so just not 1 year extension, but maybe it could be 2-year deal. So this is why the conversation is taking some time, but they still feel optimism, as Erik ten Hag said yesterday night. They want David De Gea to stay. Also, as we mentioned here last week, I would not be surprised if Man United will try to bring in a second goalkeeper with good skills to create some competition. So maybe to prepare the future at Manchester United in that position. To be honest, it will depend on the budget, as we always say on the market of Man United in general. And so again, about the owners, what's going to happen with the Qatari and Ineos group. So it's always the same discussion we're having. But I don't expect Man United in any case to go for a super expensive goalkeeper. For example, Costa from Porto is a great goalkeeper, but 75 million euros release clause is way too much for a second goalkeeper or to create some competition. I think they will try to find some opportunity on the market, some good goalkeeper who could be worth way less than 70 millions, but with good skills to prepare the future, to create some competition, and then to have the opportunity to maybe also put some pressure in a positive way on David De Gea for the next season. So this could be the idea. I'm sure Man United will look for a second goalkeeper, a backup goalkeeper with this kind of skills. We have to see what there will be available on the market. And again, how much Man United want to invest, because you can invest 5 million or 35 million, and it's very different when you're going to sign a goalkeeper. So also in this case, they have to be fast. And also in this case, we hope the situation will be clarified soon.
Thanks for that on Fabrizio. Just moving it along to the striker situation. I know you've got, well, you're based in Italy yourself, but Victor Osimhen, Napoli president came out, I think it was the president over the weekend or just before it, saying that no way is Victor Osimhen going to leave this summer. Do you think that that is, because obviously Manchester United have been linked to Harry Kane. A lot of our fans would like Osimhen. Do you think that's Osimhen off the market, or do you think that's just the president basically pushing the price up and saying, you know, he is for sale, but you're gonna have to pay a lot of money? Or do you think he will stay at Napoli?
No, I think the situation is very open on Osimhen. So I don't see Osimhen off the market right now. Could be later in the window, but now he's not off the market. I think it's very normal for the president, after winning the title for the first time in 33 years, to go in public in front of 70,000 people at the stadium and say, I'm not selling Osimhen. It's absolutely normal. But the reality is also that Osimhen and people close to him are looking at the market and at the potential options in case the right opportunity will arrive this summer. So I would keep the Osimhen situation 100% open. My personal feeling, this is an opinion speaking to some sources, but not direct sources involved in the process, because the sources involved in the process on Napoli side, on player side, still state that they don't know how much Napoli will ask for Victor Osimhen. So it's still unclear how much is needed to sign Osimhen, and it means that May, June is not going to be the right time to make this deal happen. I think it's going to be something for July, maybe could be beginning of August. So get ready to wait for Victor Osimhen in any case. But what I feel, speaking to other sources, is that Napoli would only let him go in case they can do the biggest sale, the record sale in the history of Serie A, which is more than 120 million euros, Romelu Lukaku to Chelsea from Inter. So I think they want more than this to let Victor Osimhen go and then say, okay, we received the record bid and now we can move on. So I will keep the situation open, and I keep saying that Victor Osimhen is on Manchester United list for sure.
It would be interesting with Osimhen because Harry Kane's probably going to be the same, isn't it? Both those players have got clubs that are difficult to deal with, and United do need a striker that really goes on the tour, and you wouldn't expect Osimhen or Kane to be going anywhere at the start of July. What about Muani or Erasmus Højlund? Do you think they are possibilities? I know Muani's looking like Bayern at the moment.
Yeah, for Muani and Højlund, the situation is a bit different. For Muani, Kolo Muani is a player that Manchester United know very well, and they already had some conversation with people close to the player, showing their interest and confirming their interest. But again, at the moment, they are not able to start a concrete negotiation and advance in the deal. So this is why things are going slow, and Bayern are the favorites on Kolo Muani, because in the Bundesliga, for them, it's also easier to negotiate with Bundesliga clubs. But Man United have an interest. It's one of the players they are following. For Rasmus Højlund, it's different in the sense that they are scouting the player, but it's not something advanced in terms of discussions or negotiations with the player side and with the club side. Also, Højlund has to pick a new agent in the next days. I think it will be this month, to understand more also in his next move. And so my personal feeling is that also probably Højlund needs one more step before going to a club like Manchester United, while Kolo Muani is already proving his top skills in Bundesliga in different kind of clubs. So this is the feeling, but I think in this moment, Osimhen, Kane, and Kolo Muani are on different step for Manchester United. So I would keep them as favorites in the list. But again, let's see what happens.
Just before we talk about the Barcelona and obviously De Jong situation, I want to just stay with Napoli for a moment, because you mentioned to us months ago about this 2-week release clause for Kim Min-jae. I think it's the last 2 weeks of June. Still hasn't signed the new contract, Fabrizio. There will be... we're getting closer to that. It's only a month away. Well, a bit over a month.
I think it's beginning of July. I think it's beginning of July, the release clause. Yes, I keep saying that the release clause is there. It's a bit less than 50 million euros. And Napoli are still insisting to extend that contract. So they are pushing with the player. They are pushing with his agent. They're trying to find a creative way maybe to change the release clause. Don't remove the release clause, but change it, maybe put it higher. So they're trying to find a solution. But again, nothing is agreed yet. And so let's keep the Kim situation open. At Manchester United, he's appreciated. For sure, he's a player they're following since a long time. We said about that here in November, because Man United many times have been in Italy to follow the progress of this boy. And so I think we have to understand also what happens with Harry Maguire, with Victor Lindelof, with these players who will have a conversation with Erik ten Hag at the end of the season to understand about their future. And then in that moment, we will understand more about Kim. But for sure, Man United are interested in this player. I can also say that Newcastle is another club keeping an eye on the Kim Min-jae situation. So there is competition. It's normal. The release clause is there at the moment. Let's see if Napoli will be able to change the situation. But again, for Man United, this is why before I was saying it's crucial to know about the owners, it's crucial to know about the budget on these kind of opportunities, because Kim is a big opportunity. You have to be fast. You have to be fast, and you have to plan in advance. You can't arrive there beginning of July and pretend you are the only one in the race. So Man United have been very good in moving the first steps for this player in November, in December, but now to advance in the deal and to convince the player and to reach an agreement with the player, you need to be fast. And now is the moment, end of May, beginning of June, to arrive prepared at the beginning of July and sign the player.
Yeah, it's all coming down to this ownership, isn't it? A few people in the chat are asking about Harry Maguire. You can listen to Fabrizio's update on his own channel about that. He said it will be the summer where they sit down. There was offers in January, but it's not till this summer that will be sat down and discussed. But sticking with what you said in your video, Fabrizio, this morning, you were talking about Fati and Barcelona. I've got a different angle on this. Barcelona, I read something over the weekend, and we were very aware of it, that they may have very severe financial restrictions this summer. Does that, and it's the age-old question, does that open up the Frenkie de Jong argument or possibility for Manchester United this summer? Or do you think that de Jong will be a player that Barcelona just will not sell no matter what?
At the moment, the feeling at Barcelona, and this is for the club and this is for the manager, especially for the manager, Xavi Hernandez, is that they want to continue with Frenkie de Jong. So they are prepared to let go other players like Ansu Fati, could be Rafinha, could be Ferran Torres. So they're prepared to let other players leave in the summer. But for Frenkie de Jong, he's considered a crucial player. Also because they have Sergio Busquets out of contract, still not clear if he will extend the contract or if he will try something new in another country. And this is why for them it's crucial to keep Frenkie de Jong next season. So at the moment, doesn't look easy. Then, as you mentioned, the financial fair play situation is not easy at Barcelona, not easy at all. They're trying to bring back Messi, but it's very complicated because of financial fair play. And so you never know at Barcelona, really. This is a really difficult club to understand. Sometimes they change their strategies. So I would keep a chance open. But at the moment, the idea into Barcelona, the club, the manager, and the player himself is to continue together and to try to win something important again next season. So I think it's not going to be easy at all for Man United to bring in Frenkie de Jong.
I've always said that if we could buy one midfielder this summer, my personal preference would be de Jong, because Ten Hag is obsessed with him. So a manager getting the player they're obsessed with would just be really interesting to watch. But if we don't get de Jong, a personal question I wanted to ask you was Caicedo. I really like Caicedo. I think he would be perfect for most Premier League clubs, most top European clubs. We know he nearly went to Arsenal and then he signed the contract. We know McAllister is probably going to leave and Liverpool look like they're leading that race. Do you see Caicedo leaving Brighton this summer, or do you think that contract keeps him there? And are Manchester United even looking at a player like that?
At the moment with Man United, I'm not aware of anything advanced, but you know better than me how well they know the player. He was really close to Man United when he was in Ecuador, then he joined Brighton, so they lost the opportunity in that moment. But at the moment, it's not something advanced with Man United. I think this is a situation to follow for Caicedo in the summer, because to answer your first question, I still think he has a very good chance to leave Brighton this summer. Both McAllister and Caicedo. I know that will look complicated because Brighton is always on the market. They are very tough and it's not easy to negotiate with them. But at the same time, the feeling is that when Caicedo extended the contract with Brighton, he also knew that it was to have a better salary. This is absolutely normal in football after you reject a £70 million proposal from Arsenal in January. But it's also true that Caicedo is prepared to have a top club move in the summer. So I think there is still a very good chance for him to leave Brighton in the summer and to try something different. So let's see what kind of player Man United will attack in that position. I think it's going to be important to understand, again, the budget and how much they will spend on the striker. Because in that moment, we will understand if they will go for a super expensive player or for a more kind of normal player, or maybe for an opportunity. There are free agents like Yuri Tielemans, who could be a big opportunity for many clubs. There are players like James Maddison, who is on way out at Leicester at the end of the season. In any case, no matter what happens with the relegation battle, and I'm sure he's a player they're following. So there are many players in that position. I think the investment will depend on the striker. This summer, Erik ten Hag deserves to have the striker he wanted last summer. So the priority will be the striker, and then we understand about the budget, and they will be able to clarify also who is the right midfielder for Man United project.
It's all coming down to this sale, and it's all coming down to that budget afterwards. And, we're approaching the middle of May. Fabrizio, as always, absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you for all your updates. Really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your day and week as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. See you soon here, and good luck to Man United. Ciao.
Thank you, Fabrizio. Legend there on the show. Love it. Get your comments in. I'll summarize in case you weren't here, but quite a lot to get through there from Fabrizio, of course. And look, the bottom line is that in some ways it's frustrating, and sometimes, some ways it's intriguing. So I think sometimes you talk about transfers in September when the window's closed, and we all know it's a bit of a waste of time, but we are approaching the middle of May. Like, it is the time, you know, I always think the transfer talk really starts during the March international break. We're in the middle of May, basically. Talking about transfers and, you know, what's going to happen at this point, it feels like we shouldn't be doing it, but that's only because the mess the club's in. And that, I suppose that's my message, really. Talking about transfers in May is not unordinary. It's actually expected. But every conversation you have is just completely suppressed by, well, Fabrizio said it, you know, Casidos of this world, the Osmans of this world. Every single thing he said is basically, it depends on the budget. And Erik ten Hag doesn't know the budget, and he deserves to have a budget, but he doesn't know what that budget is. And I think that fundamentally is the big problem, isn't it? And some interesting updates, though. We spoke about the sale. Let's go through these. We spoke about the sale. Fabrizio said, from what he's hearing, the next 7 to 10 days. I hope it's going to be sooner than that. And I'm confident for some reason that we will hear something before that. But the next 7 to 10 days, well, that takes you to the middle of May before we even hear something. It's a real difficult situation, isn't it, when you don't know what's going to happen. Mr. Darkseed says we need a new number 10. We don't need a number 10, mate. We might do in your fantasy world, but in the reality is we've got way more problems to solve than the number 10. If you watch my video this morning, we're miles away. You could basically say we need a new winger. You could say we need a new right back. You could say we need a new lot. I mean, the reality is the core essential positions are another midfielder that can do Casemiro's role, a striker who can put the ball in the back of the net, and a centre back. They're the three priorities. And then you get into your goalkeeper, right back, winger, number 10. You could argue you need another 7 first-team players, really, based on recent form. But I don't think we need that extent of major surgery this summer, and I certainly don't think we'll get it. Which brings me on to the goalkeeper situation. Somebody in the chat said, I wonder how long it will be until the dressing room leaks start. Have they not already started? I'm just going to drop that there. Have they not already started? The manager last night said that they're very confident of getting David De Gea on a new contract. That's the manager of the club with his own mouth. This morning, we're getting a story that people within Man United don't want David De Gea to stay. So you've got the manager saying he wants him to stay. And then the next morning, you've got a journalist putting a story out there saying that people within Man United don't want him to stay. Who are these people? Is it people in the dressing room? Is it Dean Henderson? Is it Harry Maguire? Is it Bruno Fernandes? Is it Steve McLaren? Is it Richard Arnold? Is it John Murtagh? Is it Joel Glazer? You know what I mean? These stories, I've got no problem with the story, but you talk about when are the leaks going to start? They're already bloody starting, aren't they? The manager himself has said, we want David De Gea to sign a new contract. The next morning, somebody's leaking out. Well, we don't. So whoever it is undermining the manager. Unless you want to think, well, Ten Hag's lying. How would Ten Hag lie? Why would you lie? If you know you don't want him to sign a new contract, you just say talks are ongoing. You don't publicly say, I want him to sign a new contract, and then I don't want him to sign a new contract, because then you look like a liar. So, look, I think De Gea is going to sign a new contract. That's what I think is going to happen. But when people say, when are the leaks going to start? The bottom line is they already are. You know, there's a story the next day contradicting the manager. It's already starting. And as I said last night, and as I said this morning, there's something going wrong at that football club at the moment. I don't know whether there's been falling outs. There was some rumour that players weren't happy with Luke Shaw after the Brighton game. Why? Because he came out and faced up to the fact that he cost us the game and said that we're not creating enough chances up front. I mean, are our strikers moody when they get called out by a player that got man of the match then? I just don't believe that. If we get a new keeper, would you prefer Costa or Milan keeper, says Jordan? Well, I think you need to stop with all that. Whether you want a new goalkeeper or not, you need to listen to what Fabrizio said. No, there'll be no major signing of a goalkeeper. There probably will be a goalkeeper that comes in. It needs to be somebody who can challenge De Gea, but it's not going to be a 70 million Costa or anything like that. That's just not going to happen. We are scouting a lot of goalkeepers. Let's see what happens with that situation. But De Gea is going to sign a new contract. So at the end of the day, whoever's putting the story out that they don't want him to sign a new contract, it's just toxicity again, isn't it? Because he's going to sign a new contract. Ten Hag wants him to sign a new contract, but somebody in the club doesn't. I don't know why we don't see this for what it is. it's worrying. It's worrying to me that there's people putting stuff out there that they don't want De Gea here anymore, but the manager and the player and the club are going to sign a new contract. You know, people don't call leaks out when it suits what they want, but it's still a leak and it's still contradictory and it's still, you know, it still causes issues. And this is my problem with this United side. In the last few weeks, I'm starting to see the cracks again. I've not seen it all season, but I'm starting to see those cracks where you wonder whether people are actually getting on. You know, it doesn't look like a team that's in it together anymore. They look like they've drifted apart, and I don't know why that is. Anyway, moving on, Osimhen. Interesting point on Osimhen from Fabrizio. Remember, the Napoli president said that no way, Osimhen's not for sale. Fabrizio said, I wouldn't take that as gospel right now. Maybe he will stay at Napoli, but ultimately it feels like, and he's heard that if Napoli are going to sell, then it feels like it will have to be the biggest fee ever paid for a Serie A player, which currently is 120 million euros for Lukaku. He also said that that deal probably doesn't happen until July, August. Well, Harry Kane's the same. So if you want Kane or you want Osimhen, it looks to me like neither will be there for the start of the Premier League season, and certainly not for pre-season. And you look at United this season, we need a striker that's there for the first training session in June, because we need to work on the training ground on how to create chances for that striker. Because otherwise, that striker comes into the team with no pre-season and everyone's shooting from the edge of the box and they've got to learn to work together. And it's another season of learning to work together. I want this season to be ready to go. First game of the season in August. And to do that, you've got to have your players on tour, especially when you've got a coach like Ten Hag, who has shown how he can improve players. So it's a bit of a worry around Osimhen and Kane. They're going to cost a lot of money and they're not going to be there for pre-season, which is a big thing. It is a big thing. Moani still exists on the as a target, but I think most people would rather we got Kane or Osimhen, if I'm being honest. Centre-back situation, keep it open on Kim Min-jae. That's what we've got to do. I think we've got to believe in that, haven't we? The De Jong situation, look, Barcelona need to raise funds this summer. We all know that. But the feeling is that Barcelona will sell a lot more players before they sell De Jong. And I think that, you know, well, Fabrizio sort of did confirm that as well. I would rather we didn't even bother with that De Jong this summer. I want De Jong because I want Erik Ten Hag to get the player he's most obsessed with. I mean, that fascinates me, as I've said countless times. But I'd rather Barcelona just came out and said he's not for sale under any circumstances, and United just cancel John Murta and Richard Arnold's tickets to Barcelona, and we just crack on with whatever else there is. We can't afford to buy anyone at the moment because we don't even know who is in charge. But even if we did get Qatar or Sajim, I would rather we didn't waste any time on De Jong unless, it's just not worth it. Which is why I asked about Caicedo, because I think Caicedo, the reason I asked that question of Fabrizio is, are United interested in Caicedo and will he leave this summer even though he signed a new contract for Brighton? Is I feel he will. I think that contract was more about protecting Brighton. And, putting him on a longer contract, it boosts his price. Somebody who's got 2 years left on their deal is not worth as much as someone who's got 4 years left on the deal. And I think that's what Brighton have sort of done. His price is probably going to be about 70 million quid. It's a lot of money, but I think Caicedo's a very good player. And I think he'd suit Man United so well. Whether we can do that deal, well, his dreams about playing for Real Madrid, well, they've got Tchouaméni, Camavinga, Valverde, Bellingham. You're not going to Real Madrid. So come back to Man United, which is the club that you said you supported when we nearly bought you before. I would like Caicedo. Don't know whether I like that price. I don't know whether we can even afford that price if we stick with the Glazers and Sajim. Can they pay 100 for a striker and 70 for a midfielder? But that's where I'd be going if you can't get De Jong. I like that profile of a player. And we certainly... The thing about Caicedo I like is that he can do the Casemiro role, but I think he can also play number 8 as well. I think he's a multifunctional footballer. Very physical, very energetic, but playing for Brighton, also very good on the ball. If we're not going to get De Jong, that's where I'd be going next. But there's not a lot of noise around it, which is why I'd asked Fabrizio about it. The only guarantee is a striker. We need clarity on the ownership ASAP so we can actually get moving with some form of plan, says Joshua Bellwater. A few people wanted me to talk about Harry Maguire and the situation, but there's nothing to talk about. It's a bit like Dean Henderson and Victor Lindelof and Scott McTominay. those conversations are not taking place at the moment with the club's agents and the club or anything like that. And again, that has a massive impact on who's in charge as well. If Al Thani's in charge, I think a lot of those players just naturally go. If the Glazers are still in charge and you've still got the debt, I think a lot of those players don't go, because you can't afford to take a hit on an asset that's leveraged against your debt. If you haven't got any debts, it's up to you how much you sell a player for. But when you've got a player that you've paid £80 million for and you want to sell them for £35 million 3 years later, they're listed against your debt as an asset. You know, it's a different, I don't know whether people understand this, but United sales are very locked into our debts because it's all leveraged, it's all listed, it's all makes an impact on your debt repayments and what assets you've got listed against your debt. And that's one thing that I don't think a lot of football fans understand, is that you can't just let Maguire go on a free transfer because how much you paid for him, his wages, it's all calculated in, and you can't just take a massive hit because it impacts you on every other area. If you've got no debt, it's up to the owner whether they just go, look, he's not part of our plans, get rid of him. And other clubs have done that. We've seen Barcelona do it. We've seen Real Madrid do it. We've seen clubs spend a lot of money on a signing and go, just get out. You know, it's more important that you're not part of this club anymore and you move on. But we're not able to do that under this current regime, and I don't know how that would work as well. Threefold Pass says financial fair play will be an issue even with Qatar. It'll be less of an issue if you understand what you're talking about, because obviously the debt doesn't really impact on the financial fair play limits, but the financial fair play limits are limited on wages and on transfers. So if you sell somebody, as long as you're doing it for around the price, but you do take the wages off as well. And also any new signing can be, you can do the Chelsea thing where you buy a player and put them on a longer contract and, you know, spread the cost. But you've got to have the money in the first place. As I say, I don't want to go down this road because it gets a bit complicated financially, but I read something a couple of years ago, I think it was Spurs or Everton at that point, could have spent more than anybody else in the Premier League based on financial fair play. I think they could have spent 300 million in the summer and not been in any problems with financial fair play. They didn't have the 300 million. Financial fair play, you've got to have the money. You know, the algorithm might say you can only spend 100 million, but have you got the 100 million? The algorithm might say you can spend 400 million, but you might only have 40. So it's all about having the money as well. We need to buy Osimhen and get Harry Kane for free next year. He isn't going to renew his contract, says Andy Weatherall. And also welcome to the Members Club, Glenn, as well, Glenn Gleeson. So look, interesting updates as always. I think that what interests me most is the situation around the striker. I think it's so obvious that we don't know how to play with a number 9, and I think it's so obvious that the two number 9s that we're going to go for, Kane and Osimhen, aren't going to be there for pre-season. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, really. You're going to spend massive amounts of money on a striker for a team that's not used to creating for a striker, and then you're not going to have your new striker in the key period of pre-season to work on patterns for the season. So I don't know how important that is to Ten Hag. I'd say it's quite an important thing that he needs that striker there more than anything. The most important signing is a striker, and the most important thing is that they're there from day one training with the team in July. But Osimhen and Kane look very unlikely to be there even for the first game of the season because of how long the negotiations are going to be. The only way you get Osimhen for the opening day of the season or Kane for the opening day of the season is if you walk to Spurs and Napoli and say, there's 100 million. That might make them do the deal quick. But we don't negotiate like that anyway. So what worries me the most, and I'm sure it worries Ten Hag, is he's got a team that doesn't know how to play or create for a striker. He's got a striker that he wants, but he won't have a pre-season to work on them becoming used to playing with that player. So next season could be, it's not like Haaland at Man City, which has been a bit transitional, but Man City are a team that can create. And that's still been a bit of an adjustment for them this year. I can see us with a Harry Kane or an Osimhen in September, and we're struggling because we don't know how to cater for them, and they've got to get used to how we play. That's something that really needs to be worked on in pre-season. And at the moment, that worries me a little bit as well. Jazzy, if you don't like it, don't watch. And Kane will join around the same time Casemiro did, says Threefold Path. Well, I hope I'm wrong on that, but I think that we all know how Spurs work, that if Kane's coming to the club, they'll be bitter about it, Spurs, and they'll try and twist it and make it as difficult as it can. Yeah, okay. Well, look, I'm back at 8 o'clock tonight. I'm doing a watch along on That's Football for Brighton Everton at 5:30 as well. So if you want to join me on there, and it's a bank holiday in the UK, you might be free. But I will be live at 8 o'clock tonight on the United Stand as well, as per usual. But interesting update. And as I say, you know, the De Gea thing, you can go where you want to go with the De Gea thing, but ultimately, don't tell me that club's not leaking again. Of course it's leaking. The manager says we want him to sign a new contract last night. This morning, people are saying we don't want him to sign a new contract. Somebody's undermining the manager. Someone's leaking again. It always seems to be around De Gea and the Manchester Evening News as well, negativity. So again, is it the same person and people that were leaking 18 months ago? Is it a coach? Is it someone on the board? Is it somebody in the canteen? I mean, when it says certain people within United don't want De Gea to sign the contracts, I'm sort of like, it's an interesting story. I've got nothing against the story, but I'm sort of like, who is it? Is it the cleaner? Is it the CEO? Is it the canteen person? Is it the striker? Is it the reserve goalkeeper? Is it Steve McLaren? I mean, nobody knows. So really, the story is just inflammatory. And we know that there's an agenda against De Gea. We know it. I'm not saying it's a wrong agenda, but we know it, and we know there is. And people will jump on that and go, oh, they want him out of the club. But who's the source? Who is the source? Because really, I guarantee there's somebody in Man United who thinks we should sell Bruno. There will be, but they might be working in admin. So it's a weird one. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Back at 8 o'clock. Make sure you smash a like on the video. Legends for tuning in live. Thanks, everyone who's not watching live as well. I'll see you at 8 o'clock. Take care.